Do I even know what I'm doing right now? Ugh! Hi everyone, Mystery Drone here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Sweet Trip album, A Tiny House in Secret Speeches, Polar Equals. With it now being over a decade since the release of their last record, we now see the triumphant studio album return of Sweet Trip, a San Francisco cult classic considered to be one of indie music's true electronic innovators, seamlessly and subtly blending elements of noise, glitch, pop, IDM, and more on the 2003 fan favorite Velocity Design Comfort. And while this record does loom large in Sweet Trip's scant discography, it's also important to remember the 2009 follow-up You Will Never Know Why, which was a lot more guitar-driven by comparison, less glitchy overall too, which is fine because I think the tunes shone a bit brighter on this one. And while this might be where the duo left off, there's really no telling after all of these years where their sound may end up next. But honestly, after listening to this, I'm pretty happy to say Roberto and Valerie are not stuck in the past. They stay true to their electronic and indie roots on this one, while leaning into the dream pop and shoegaze elements of their sound harder than they have before, which makes A Tiny House a record you can really get lost in with its relaxed lead vocals, surreal layers of guitars, keys, and electronics that bleed into each other, creating this soothing wall of sound. The duo sometimes extends these tracks out into 5, 6, 7-minute lengths, really trying to flush every idea out of these pieces they can and allowing these songs to really wash over the listener in a sublime way. It's a vibe, but also engaging. It is shy and soft to the touch, but pops on key tracks too. The opening track, for example, is some of the best shoegaze I've heard in a bit. The pulsating beats, shimmering electronics, and fuzzy walls of guitar make this a rowdy but serene kickoff to the record. The howling layers of lead melodies around the midpoint of the track too feel like I'm running across a beach that's melting under my feet. Then the following Surviving a Smile with its gently pulsating rhythms, curious chords, and melancholy vocal harmonies delivered in a hushed fashion. It sounds like what you would get if Elliott Smith were forced to make an electropop tune, and I couldn't be happier with the results. The weight of comfort, the rain is comfort, sounds like Dream Pop's long-awaited answer to ballroom music, but it's all soaked in these delays that cause almost each piece of instrumentation here to ripple out into infinity. Meanwhile, the track Chapters is really the closest thing we have to a visceral banger here. The track has a relaxed tune set to punchy electropop beats, some cute analog synth patches, and little touches of noise peppered throughout the track to add some extra texture. EAVE Foolery Mill 5 is like the record's slow dance number. Listening to it feels like being crowned king and queen at the Dream Pop Prom. So all of these tracks collectively contribute to a very strong first half for this LP, but as I dug into this record deeper, I found the second half isn't quite as beefed up as the first. Whether it's running thin on sonic ideas or well-structured songs, it seems like the potential for A Tiny House drifts further and further away as we push past the halfway point. For one, the quirky and noisy glitches strewn about Snow Purple Treasures kind of harshes the vibe, which isn't usually the case as Sweet Trip incorporates elements of noise into their tracks, but for some strange reason it is here. Either way, it just seems like they're getting in the way of their own euphoria on this one. Randfilt is a somewhat cheeky, unexpected instrumental piece that goes in an IDM direction, which is obviously a genre Sweet Trip has dabbled in before, but it seems especially out of place on this very hazy track list. Not to mention some of the beats on this cut run a little stiff. Meanwhile, You is a super promising song to start, but then it gets more and more disjointed as it continues, with each portion of the track breaking off into another direction or variant that feels like it's heading toward a destination that's not really there. Then there's Walkers Beware, We Drive Into the Sun, which has a painfully bland first half that is sadly not made up for in the predictably loud, shoegazy second half. Sapphire is a kind of goofy interlude, again, another one that doesn't really add too much to the record at this point. Then the ending of this LP is kind of the moment of truth with two 6-minute songs back to back, the first of which is Polar Equals, which I found to be okay while it was on, but structurally it's one of the most tedious tracks here. The whole first portion is really slow going, only for it to eventually transition into a build that once again kind of hits a wall of sound with an instrumental palette that isn't too much unlike any other on this record at various points. Then we get a somewhat anticlimactic finish, which is unfortunate because it seems apparent the duo is trying to make this ending as climactic as possible, with all of its glistening synth layers and speedy, tom-heavy drum beats. But ultimately it just kind of sounds like a piece of music that you would hear at the end of an 80s movie where they're like updating you on everything that like all the characters are doing. Mixed with a touch of Vangelis and just about as much reverb as the duo could pack into this mix, which is not a bad set of influences to be working from in concept, but once this track hits its stride, it really doesn't build or go anywhere from there. Still though, ultimately I found this record to be pretty enjoyable. Not a bad project from Sweet Trip considering all the years it's been and the slight change in sound that this record presents. Yeah, in my view, the second half was severely lacking something the first half had, but I still think the duo came through in a big way on this one, and if they can make a record this good so many years past the point of their last studio record, they can make an even better one in the near future. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this one. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Sweet Trip, forever.